The planet had long been forgotten by most of the galaxy. Once, it had been home to a thriving alien civilization, but now it was silent, covered in strange forests with towering crystal-like trees and fog that rolled across the valleys like slow rivers. Explorers from many worlds occasionally visited, but most left disappointed, finding nothing but ruins and echoes of a past they could barely understand. That's when a small team of alien researchers arrived, looking for anything that had survived the centuries of abandonment. They weren't expecting to find something alive, especially not something so enormous docked deep in one of the valleys. Hidden behind thick growths of violet moss and silver-leaf trees, they spotted a shape moving slowly. At first, they thought it was a rock formation, but then the ground trembled slightly with each movement, and a low, mournful sound reached their ears. It was a sound of pain, long and deep, one that no machine or scanner could ignore. They moved closer, careful not to frighten whatever it was. And finally, through the mist, they saw it dot. It was a mammoth-like creature, larger than any animal they had ever recorded. Its skin was pale blue with streaks of gold, and its tusks curved elegantly like the arches of an ancient bridge. But what caught their attention most was the creature's foot. One of its massive feet was swollen, thickened, and clearly infected. The skin was raw in places, crusted in others, and every step caused the giant to wince and stumble. From the smell and the appearance, it was clear that the infection had been growing for years, perhaps even centuries. The creature moved with extreme caution, testing each step as if it were walking on fragile ice. The team's leader, an older alien biologist, knelt down and scanned the wound. "This isn't just an injury," they said softly. "This is neglect. It has been left untreated for hundreds of years." Others in the team shuddered, unable to imagine such prolonged suffering. Even among alien species, which often lived longer and tolerated harsher conditions than humans, this level of pain was unusual and cruel. The team wondered why no one had cared for the creature all this time. The records they found in the ruins suggested that the mammoth had belonged to a noble line of guardians, meant to protect the forest and its creatures. Somehow, over the centuries, they had been abandoned, left to fend for themselves without anyone noticing or intervening. The mammoth noticed the team too. Its eyes were wide and deep, filled with both curiosity and fear. It let out a low, rumbling growl, not aggressive, but wary, as if it had learned long ago that other beings could hurt it. The team moved carefully, keeping their voices low and their movements slow. They set up scanning devices at a distance first, trying to measure the depth of the infection and the general health of the creature without disturbing it. The readings were staggering. Its heart beat steadily, but slowly, as though conserving energy to survive the pain. Its muscles were weak from lack of mobility, and its skin, though thick and resilient, showed signs of age accelerated by stress and infection. The team discussed their options. The planet had alien medical technology, of course, but nothing capable of handling something this advanced or this neglected. Their own species had focused on smaller creatures, or ones that had received regular care. This mammoth had survived in isolation for centuries, and every layer of its injury told a story of endurance. Some members of the team argued that attempting treatment could be dangerous. The creature was enormous and unpredictable, and without proper understanding, they could worsen the wound or even kill it accidentally. Others argued that leaving it to suffer was not an option. Its suffering was evident and undeniable. No one could stand by while life in need slowly wasted away, as they debated. The mammoth took careful steps toward a small stream, limping heavily. It lowered its head to drink, wincing as the infected foot touched the soft soil. Watching this, the team felt a mix of awe and sadness. Despite its suffering, it had survived alone, navigating centuries of neglect and danger. The sight made them realize how resilient life could be, even when left to fend for itself in the harshest of conditions. The Mammoth had lived through storms, predators, and perhaps even natural disasters. And yet it still moved forward, driven by the simple will to survive. The decision was made. They would seek help from outside the planet. Among the many civilizations that explored the galaxy, humans were known for their innovative medical techniques and willingness to take risks. Though they had only recently begun deep space exploration, their medical specialists had a reputation for solving problems that others considered impossible. The team sent a message across the stars, describing the Mammoth, its injuries, and the urgency of the situation. It was a call for help, a plea for someone with skill and courage to save a creature that no one else had noticed for centuries. While waiting for a response, the team continued to observe the Mammoth. They noted its routines, how it grazed on the strange mosses, how it found sheltered spots during storms, and how it interacted with the few smaller creatures that still survived in the valley. There was a grace to its movements despite the pain, a quiet dignity in the way it held its head high even as it limped. The team began giving it space, understanding that trust could not be forced. They spoke in soft tones, avoided sudden gestures, and tried to let it see that they meant no harm. Slowly, the Mammoth began to relax in their presence, even allowing them to get slightly closer during the cooler hours of the day when it felt less pain. Days passed, and the message reached its destination. A human medic responded immediately, preparing for the journey. They were intrigued and determined, aware of the challenge that awaited them. The alien team briefed the human on everything they knew: the Mammoth's size, its medical condition, the environment, and its long history of neglect. The human listened carefully, asking questions, considering possible tools, and imagining how to adapt Earth-based medical knowledge to an alien creature. It was a difficult task, but the medic had a quiet confidence, a calm energy that suggested they had dealt with similar impossible situations before, even if never on this scale. Meanwhile, the Mammoth continued its lonely life, unaware that help was on the way. It moved slowly across the valley, each step careful, each movement deliberate. It seemed almost aware that its pain had been ignored for too long, and perhaps it had learned to accept it as part of existence. But there was also a spark of curiosity in its eyes, a flicker that suggested it still sought something, perhaps relief, perhaps companionship, perhaps simply recognition of its existence. That spark would become important, the team realized. Without trust, any attempt at treatment would fail. The Mammoth needed to feel safe, and it needed to see that someone, somewhere, cared enough to act. By the time the human medic ship entered the planet's orbit, the alien team had spent weeks preparing. They had mapped out the terrain, studied the creature's movements, and learned enough about its behavior to anticipate its reactions. They had also begun building special equipment designed to reach and support the giant Mammoth without causing it additional stress. It was an effort born of compassion, ingenuity, and urgency. Everyone involved understood the stakes. Centuries of neglect had left a fragile, resilient life in need of immediate care. As the ship descended, the Mammoth lifted its head at the sound of the engines, ears twitching. For the first time in centuries, a new presence was near, one that might change its life forever. The stage was set for a meeting that no one on the planet would ever forget. The Mammoth had endured isolation, pain, and abandonment, but now, perhaps, relief was finally on the way. And somewhere deep inside, the team could sense, the creature seemed to recognize that it was not alone. The human medic ship arrived quietly, slipping through the atmosphere with precision. Unlike the alien vessels, which hovered and shimmered with unfamiliar energy, this ship was sleek, with a practical design built for efficiency and survival. Inside, the medic prepared quietly, checking instruments and reviewing data sent by the alien team. Every detail mattered: the Mammoth's size, its unique biology, the infection in its foot. and the centuries of neglect it had endured. The medic knew that this would not be an ordinary mission. It was not just about medicine. It was about understanding a living being that had survived unimaginable odds. When the ship landed on the rocky plateau near the valley, the human medic stepped out. Their suit was lightweight but reinforced, allowing free movement while protecting against the planet's unpredictable environment. The alien team greeted them with a mixture of relief and nervousness. They had been preparing for weeks, but the arrival of a human specialist felt like the turning point. The medic nodded respectfully to the alien biologist leading the team and immediately began reviewing the data again. Instruments were set up around the valley, scanners activated, and the medic took careful measurements from a distance. It was clear from the beginning that proximity would need to be earned slowly. The Mammoth noticed the new arrival almost immediately. Its massive head lifted, ears twitching, and eyes narrowing in cautious curiosity. It had seen other beings before, alien researchers who had studied it from a distance, but this human presence felt different. There was a calmness about the medic, a stillness in their movements that suggested they were not there to harm. The Mammoth's growl was low and hesitant, more of a question than a threat. The medic watched carefully, their heart racing slightly at the sight of the enormous creature. Even through the layers of protective gear, they felt the weight of the Mammoth's presence. For the first hours, there was little action. The medic observed, noting how the Mammoth moved, where it placed its weight, and how it reacted to the alien team's instruments. The swollen foot caused it to limp heavily, but it adapted, shifting its weight to avoid aggravating the infection. It was a slow, careful walk, deliberate and cautious. Each step seemed like a negotiation with its own pain, and the medic marveled at its resilience. Despite centuries of suffering, the Mammoth carried itself with dignity. Its eyes, though filled with the weariness of time, held a quiet intelligence that was impossible to ignore. Communication was the first challenge. Unlike the alien team, who had some shared understanding with the Mammoth due to advanced translation technology, the human had no immediate way to speak to it. Words would not help, and even gestures could be misinterpreted. So the medic relied on presence alone, moving slowly, making soft sounds, avoiding sudden actions, and allowing the Mammoth to see them without fear. It was a patient process, requiring hours of quiet observation. Gradually, the Mammoth lowered its stance slightly, a sign of cautious curiosity rather than aggression. During this time, the medic reviewed the alien records again. They learned that the Mammoth species had evolved to survive harsh environments, with thick skin, strong bones, and long lifespans. Yet prolonged infection could cause chronic issues, including weakness, pain, and even organ strain. The human began planning a treatment that would respect the Mammoth's unique biology. They considered everything: how to clean the wound, how to drain infection without causing collapse, and how to manage pain safely. The medic knew that even the slightest mistake could result in disaster. It was not just about saving the Mammoth. It was about earning its trust and guiding it toward healing. The alien team helped by preparing the surrounding area. They cleared safe spaces, ensured that no unexpected wildlife would interfere, and set up soft landing zones in case the Mammoth needed to lie down during treatment. The medic worked closely with them, explaining why each step was necessary. Together, they built a delicate balance between alien technology and human intuition. The Mammoth watched silently, occasionally shifting its weight or turning its head to observe the new arrival. Its curiosity was growing, and the medic recognized a subtle willingness to cooperate. As evening fell, the medic approached slightly closer, always slow, always deliberate. They knelt on the soft moss, careful not to startle the Mammoth. The creature's eyes followed every movement, ears flicking, nostrils flaring. The medic spoke softly in a calm tone, words meaningless to the Mammoth, yet somehow conveying intent. Slowly, The mammoth shifted, lowering its massive foot near a safe patch of soft soil. The medic extended a hand, not touching, but letting it see the gesture of peace. For the first time in centuries, the mammoth seemed to understand that help had arrived. Its rumble was softer now, more of a sigh than a growl, as though recognizing the effort being made on its behalf. That night, the medic reviewed all the data again, cross-referencing alien biological notes with their own knowledge of medicine. They planned the procedure meticulously, step by step. First, the infection needed to be carefully cleaned. Any rough action could trigger extreme pain or defensive reactions. Second, specialized tools had to be adapted to handle tissue far tougher than anything on Earth. Third, pain management had to be administered slowly, avoiding shock or stress. It was a delicate combination of strategy, skill, and compassion. The medic understood that this was not just a technical challenge, it was a relationship being built, one based on trust and patience. The following morning, the mammoth was already moving toward the human and alien team. It limped slowly but steadily, as if aware that the new arrival was there to help, not to harm. The medic greeted it softly, kneeling low, and spoke in the same calm tone as before. The mammoth sniffed the air, lowering its head near the medic's hand, still cautious but no longer fleeing. The team watched in awe, realizing how rare this moment was. Centuries of neglect had not broken the creature's spirit. Instead, it had survived, ready now to accept assistance when someone finally showed compassion. With the mammoth's cooperation slowly emerging, the medic began preparing for initial treatment steps. They applied soft cleansing agents to small, unaffected areas first, allowing the mammoth to adjust to the sensation. Every movement was slow, careful, and deliberate. The mammoth shifted its weight, occasionally lifting the injured foot slightly, testing the interaction. Each success, no matter how small, reinforced trust. The medic spoke softly, maintaining a rhythm that was soothing rather than commanding. Even without words, the mammoth began to understand that relief was coming, that its suffering might finally be addressed after centuries of pain. Over the next several days, the medic continued this careful approach. They studied the mammoth's behavior, noted its responses, and slowly introduced more complex actions. The alien team assisted by stabilizing equipment and monitoring vital signs, but it was the human touch, patient, gentle, consistent, that made the difference. The mammoth began allowing minor touch near the non-infected areas, leaning slightly toward the medic's presence rather than away. It was a small breakthrough, but one that signaled hope. For the first time in centuries, the mammoth seemed to sense that it was not alone, that someone understood its suffering and was willing to act on it. By the end of the week, the medic felt ready to begin initial treatment. The mammoth was calmer in their presence. Trust had been established, and the groundwork for more invasive care had been set. The alien team was impressed, having never seen a being respond so quickly to a human's combination of patience and understanding. Plans were made for the first stage of intervention, cleaning the wound carefully, assessing the depth of infection, and preparing for longer treatment sessions. The mammoth, for its part, moved slowly toward the area prepared by the team, signaling a willingness to participate in the process. It was a moment of quiet triumph, the beginning of a new chapter for a life long neglected. As night fell once again, the medic watched the mammoth settle near the stream, its massive body curling slightly for rest. The infection still caused discomfort, but the creature was less agitated, less fearful. For the first time in centuries, relief seemed possible. The medic reflected on the journey so far. A blend of science, intuition, and compassion had brought them to this point. They knew the challenges ahead would be greater, but for now, the mammoth's trust was the most important victory. It was a reminder that even the most enormous, seemingly untouchable beings could recognize care and respond to it, bridging gaps that technology alone could not. The human medic spent long hours observing the mammoth. Each day brought small but noticeable changes. The creature moved more steadily, shifting its weight with slightly less hesitation, and seemed to be watching the medic as much as the medic was watching it. There was a careful intelligence in its eyes, a deep awareness that made every decision the medic made feel vital. The infection in the mammoth's foot remained severe, but now, for the first time, it allowed gentle observation without panic. The medic realized that trust had grown into something fragile yet meaningful, a connection that could not be forced, only respected. The first step was understanding. The mammoth species had been extinct elsewhere for centuries, and most knowledge about it came from old alien records. The medic pored over every page, comparing notes, analyzing biological data, and looking for patterns in healing, pain response, and behavior. It was not like any creature on Earth. Its blood carried compounds that slowed aging. Its muscles retained strength, even under strain, and its skin was thick enough to resist most injuries, yet surprisingly sensitive in certain areas. Every layer of information revealed a creature that had evolved to endure harsh environments, but had never experienced the kind of neglect it now faced. The medic realized that the abscess had grown far beyond a simple wound. It had hardened over centuries, forming layers that were inflamed and infected, with tissue that was both fragile and resistant. The surrounding skin had developed small cracks, each one a potential source of pain and infection. The mammoth's immune system had adapted as best it could, keeping the infection from spreading to vital organs, but at a terrible cost. Its movements were cautious, slow, and deliberate, conserving energy and avoiding unnecessary pressure on the injured foot. Watching it, the medic felt a profound respect for the creature's resilience. Surviving in pain for centuries required more than physical strength. It required determination and patience. The alien team provided samples and tools to help understand the infection. The medic analyzed them carefully, using both alien technology and human medical knowledge. They discovered that the infection was not caused by a single pathogen, but by a combination of microorganisms that had adapted to survive for centuries in the mammoth's tissue. It was a unique challenge, one that no medicine alone could solve. The medic would need to combine careful cleaning, slow removal of hardened tissue, and targeted treatment to give the mammoth a chance to heal. Every step had to be planned with precision. One wrong move could cause shock, collapse, or even death. To prepare, the medic spent hours near the mammoth, observing behavior rather than taking direct action. They noted how the creature shifted weight when it felt discomfort, how it responded to sounds and movements, and how it tolerated proximity. Every detail mattered. The mammoth's eyes were alert, watching, analyzing, and sometimes seeming to respond to the medic's calm presence. The human realized that understanding pain was as much about psychology as biology. The mammoth had learned to endure, to hide signs of extreme pain, to avoid attracting attention from potential predators. The medic would need to read subtle signals, gestures, and small sounds to know when he could proceed safely. Trust-building exercises became part of each day. The medic would sit quietly near the mammoth, allowing it to come closer at its own pace. Soft, consistent sounds helped calm the creature, while slow hand movements, without touching, reassured it that no harm was intended. Sometimes, the mammoth would shift slightly, lowering its massive head near the medic's hand, sniffing the air, and then retreating slowly. Each small approach was a victory, a sign that the bond was strengthening. The medic understood that without this bond, no treatment could succeed. Pain alone would make the mammoth defensive, and centuries of neglect had already made it cautious of every new presence. The medic also studied the mammoth's environment. The valley was not empty. Strange plants, small alien animals, and shifting weather patterns all influenced the mammoth's behavior and recovery potential. Certain plants had natural antibacterial properties. Some soil minerals helped strengthen its skin, and the movement of streams and water sources provided both hydration and natural cooling for its body. Understanding the context in which the mammoth had survived helped the medic plan treatment that would work in harmony with its natural adaptations. Every detail of the environment became part of the strategy. Nutrition was another concern. The mammoth's weakened state meant it could not graze freely for long periods without risking collapse. The medic, with guidance from the alien team, created a supplemental feeding plan. Soft, nutrient-rich plant blends were introduced slowly, allowing the mammoth to regain strength without stressing its injured foot. Observing how it ate, how it shifted its weight while feeding, and how it reacted to new textures and flavors provided valuable insights. The medic realized that even simple acts, like eating or drinking, were connected to the pain it carried. Each step, each bite, required careful planning to avoid further injury. As the days passed, the medic began documenting everything: foot measurements, infection patterns, behavioral responses, and vital signs. Each piece of data would help guide treatment. The mammoth, sensing the consistency and care, grew more comfortable with the medic's presence. Occasionally, it would lift its head to observe the human, as if recognizing an ally rather than a threat. The alien team watched this quietly, amazed at the patience and calm the medic brought. They had seen many creatures struggle with human or alien intervention, but none had responded with such trust after centuries of neglect. The medic also worked on creating specialized tools. Traditional surgical instruments were too small or fragile for the mammoth's massive tissue. Alien technology offered solutions, but many devices were not designed for living tissue that had been infected and hardened for centuries. Combining ideas, the medic designed flexible, reinforced tools capable of cleaning and removing infected layers without causing collapse. These tools were tested on samples in controlled settings first, ensuring they would be safe when applied to the living mammoth. Every design decision was influenced by the mammoth's unique biology, the centuries of neglect it had endured, and the need to minimize stress and pain. Understanding the mammoth's pain response was a delicate process. Observing micro-reactions, ear twitches, eye movements, slight changes in posture became critical. The medic learned that the mammoth could endure minor touch in some areas, but reacted violently in others. Each observation was carefully recorded, and the medic adjusted their approach constantly. Slowly, patterns emerged. Certain vocal tones, soft, consistent noises, and gentle movements around the mammoth's head seemed to calm it. Certain sense and environmental conditions also influenced its behavior. Combining these insights allowed the medic to begin creating a plan that balanced medical intervention with emotional comfort. By the end of the week, the medic felt ready for the first stage of treatment. There would be no rushing. The mammoth's trust had been earned through patience, observation, and consistent care. Now, the medic would begin cleaning the wound gently, removing superficial layers of infection, and testing the mammoth's response to minor interventions. Everything had to be slow, deliberate, and predictable. The mammoth had endured centuries of neglect, and any sudden movement or unfamiliar touch could undo the fragile bond that had been established. The alien team prepared the area, clearing space and stabilizing instruments. But they left the mammoth to the human medic's care. They knew that this stage required a calm, patient presence that could interpret subtle responses instinctively. The medic spent hours near the mammoth that morning, watching it shift, sniff, and adjust. They spoke softly, maintaining the same calm rhythm that had built trust over days. Gradually, the mammoth stepped closer, lowering its massive head to the medic's level. It was a silent acknowledgement that the process could begin, that it understood the intent behind the careful, deliberate presence of this human being. As the medic prepared tools and solutions, they paused for a moment, observing the mammoth's eyes. There was a depth there, centuries of pain and survival, but also a spark of recognition and cautious hope. The medic understood that success would not only mean physical healing, but emotional reassurance. The mammoth had been ignored for centuries, left to suffer alone, and now it had to relearn trust. Every step forward would be as much about connection as about medicine. The stage was set. The medic had a clear understanding of the mammoth's biology, the environment, and the complex nature of its injury. Trust had been carefully built, and the mammoth had shown signs of willingness. The first stage of treatment would be gentle and cautious, a test of patience and skill. But for the first time in centuries, there was hope. Centuries of pain could be addressed, and perhaps, slowly, the mammoth could regain strength, mobility, and relief. It was a beginning, a careful, deliberate first step toward restoring a life that had been ignored for far too long. The day of the treatment arrived with a quiet tension in the valley. The human medic had prepared for weeks, designing tools, studying the mammoth's behavior, and understanding every subtle signal that could indicate pain or stress. The alien team had cleared the area, creating a safe space where the mammoth could move without slipping or hurting itself further. The medic knew that this stage was the most critical. The mammoth's foot had been neglected for centuries, hardened with layers of infection that would not be easy to remove. Every move had to be deliberate, every action carefully measured. The mammoth approached slowly, its massive body casting long shadows in the morning light. It had become accustomed to the medic's presence, but centuries of pain had left deep-rooted caution. Its steps were careful, placing weight on the uninjured feet while keeping the infected foot slightly lifted. The medic spoke softly, kneeling low, making no sudden movements, and allowing the mammoth to come as close as it wished. The creature sniffed the air, watching every motion, before lowering its head gently near the medic. It was a silent agreement. The process could begin. The first step was simple, but essential, preparing the wound for cleaning. The medic used soft cleansing solutions, applying them carefully to areas just around the infection first, allowing the mammoth to sense the relief without triggering pain. The mammoth flinched slightly, but remained steady, a testament to the trust that had been built. Observing the subtle shifts in its body, the medic adjusted the approach, ensuring that no movement caused unnecessary discomfort. The alien team stood back, providing support, but leaving the primary task to the human, understanding that the bond between human and mammoth was crucial at this moment. Once the area around the infection was clean, the medic began the delicate task of removing hardened tissue. It was painstaking work, requiring specialized tools that could scrape away layers without tearing living tissue beneath. The mammoth trembled slightly, responding instinctively to the unfamiliar sensation. The medic worked slowly, pausing frequently, speaking softly, and letting the creature adjust before continuing. Every layer removed revealed another, each one thicker and more resilient than the last. It was a test of patience, skill, and courage, but the mammoth allowed it to continue, as if recognizing that relief was finally possible. Pain management was another critical aspect. The medic used carefully calculated doses of sedation, ensuring that the mammoth would not experience extreme discomfort while remaining aware enough to cooperate. It was a delicate balance. Too little sedation could trigger panic or aggression, while too much could cause collapse or long-term complications. The medic adjusted continuously, monitoring vital signs and observing subtle body language. The mammoth's breathing slowed, its trembling reduced, and a cautious calm began to emerge. It was a small victory, but an essential one in a process that would take hours. The alien team assisted by providing monitoring equipment. Sensors measured heart rate, blood flow, and stress indicators, offering critical feedback that helped the medic make real-time decisions. The mammoth responded well to this coordinated effort, its massive body shifting only when necessary. Even as the procedure continued, it occasionally lifted its head slightly, watching the medic with intelligent eyes, as though acknowledging the care being given. These small gestures gave the team hope and reinforced the importance of patience, empathy, and attention to detail. As the cleaning progressed, the medic began to notice changes in the mammoth's behavior. Subtle shifts in posture, the occasional soft rumble, and slower movements indicated that the layers of infection were beginning to release pressure. The medic smiled quietly, recognizing that centuries of neglect were finally being addressed. Yet, there was still a long way to go. Beneath the surface, the infection was deep and complex, with pockets of hardened tissue that would require careful attention over multiple stages. The medic knew that rushing could undo everything they had accomplished so far. The mammoth, despite the discomfort, seemed to understand the intent behind the medic's actions. It lifted its massive foot slightly when asked, allowing the human to work with precision. Each movement was slow and deliberate, synchronized with the creature's breathing and micro-reactions. The medic felt a deep sense of connection, recognizing that healing was not just about medicine, but also about trust and communication. For centuries, this mammoth had been alone, ignored, and in pain. Now, it was learning that someone cared enough to act gently, patiently, and with respect for its life. The hours passed slowly, each one filled with careful attention. The medic worked steadily, cleaning, scraping, and observing, never allowing haste to compromise the procedure. The alien team continued monitoring, providing supplies, and ensuring safety. Occasionally, the mammoth shifted, moving its head or adjusting its weight, but it remained surprisingly calm, a testament to the bond that had been established. Every small gesture of cooperation was a victory, a sign that centuries of pain could be addressed with patience, skill, and empathy. During the procedure, the medic discovered a layer of tissue so hardened that it had become almost like stone. Removing it required delicate precision and specialized tools. The mammoth tensed, sensing the pressure, but the medic paused, spoke softly, and adjusted technique. Slowly, layer by layer, the hardened tissue began to give way. The mammoth's breathing became steadier, and a subtle relief seemed to pass through its body. It was as if the centuries of infection were being peeled away, revealing strength and resilience that had lain dormant for generations. The alien team watched in awe. They had never seen a creature endure such a process with trust and patience. Many species would have reacted violently, refusing cooperation and risking further injury. But the mammoth had learned to read the medic's intent, to sense the careful rhythm, and to allow the process to continue. It was a profound demonstration of intelligence, emotion, and connection. The medic, focused on the task, felt a quiet pride and responsibility. This was more than medicine. It was a chance to restore dignity, to honor life that had been ignored for too long. As the first stage of treatment neared completion, the medic paused to observe the mammoth's overall condition. Despite the pain, the creature's posture was improving, and its breathing was more relaxed. The swelling had decreased slightly, and the initial layers of infection had been successfully removed. It was not a complete cure, but it was a critical first step. The mammoth seemed aware of the difference, shifting its weight with less hesitation and lowering its head in a subtle gesture of trust. The medic felt a surge of hope. Centuries of suffering had begun to be addressed, and the mammoth was responding positively to care. The final steps involved applying a protective layer and gentle treatment to encourage healing. The medic used carefully prepared compounds that would reduce infection, soothe irritation, and promote regeneration. Each application was done slowly, allowing the mammoth to sense the relief without triggering pain. It shifted slightly, then relaxed, a sign that it recognized the benefits of the treatment. The alien team assisted by monitoring the environment, ensuring that temperature, humidity, and soil conditions were optimal for recovery. Every detail was considered, reflecting a blend of human intuition and alien technology. By the end of the day, the mammoth had endured hours of careful treatment. It stood steadily, breathing deeply, and its injured foot showed noticeable improvement. The human medic stepped back, observing quietly, allowing the creature to rest and adjust. There was still much work ahead: follow-up treatments, monitoring, and gradual strengthening. But this first stage had been a success. The mammoth had allowed intervention, responded to care, and begun a process of healing that had been impossible for centuries. As the sun set over the valley, the mammoth rested near the stream, its massive body stretching comfortably. The medic sat nearby, reflecting on the day's progress. Trust had been established, patience had paid off, and the first steps toward healing had been completed. For the first time in centuries, relief seemed possible. The mammoth had survived alone for generations, and now, with careful attention and compassion, it had a chance to regain strength, mobility, and dignity. The human medic understood that this was just the beginning. But it was a powerful beginning, a reminder that even the most neglected lives could respond to care when approached with skill, empathy, and patience. The following days brought a new rhythm to the valley. The mammoth, once weighed down by centuries of pain, began moving with a subtle, cautious strength. Each step was more deliberate, less hesitant, and the swelling in its foot gradually decreased. The human medic observed quietly from nearby, checking vitals, monitoring behavior, and making small adjustments to the treatment plan. The mammoth's trust had deepened, and with it, the possibilities for recovery expanded. What had once seemed impossible was slowly becoming real. Feeding became a vital part of the healing process. The mammoth could no longer rely solely on the limited plants it had grazed on for centuries. So the medic, with guidance from the alien team, introduced nutrient-rich blends that were easy to digest and carefully formulated to strengthen its body. The mammoth approached these foods cautiously at first, sniffing and testing them before consuming. Over time, it began eating more confidently, demonstrating that its strength was returning. The medic noted subtle changes. Its breathing became steadier, its steps less deliberate, and its posture more relaxed. Each meal, each careful step, was a small victory in a long journey of recovery. The alien team continued to assist with environmental management. Streams were cleaned to ensure safe hydration. Plants with natural antibacterial properties were introduced to the grazing areas, and soft soil patches were prepared to minimize pressure on the injured foot. The mammoth, sensing these subtle improvements in its surroundings, responded positively. It walked more freely, lifted its head higher, and occasionally allowed the medic to approach closely without retreating. It was clear that the creature was beginning to feel stronger, not just physically, but emotionally as well. The pain that had defined centuries of its existence was slowly losing its hold. Observation remained critical. The medic studied the mammoth's movements carefully, noting small shifts in balance, weight distribution, and posture. These microsignals were essential for understanding progress and preventing setbacks. Occasionally, the mammoth would stumble slightly or pause to test its foot, but these moments were brief. The medic adjusted treatments accordingly, adding gentle exercises to encourage flexibility and circulation in the affected limb. Over time, the mammoth began responding to these exercises with greater ease, walking longer distances and exploring parts of the valley it had avoided for decades. Behavioral changes became evident as well. The mammoth's once constant low rumble of discomfort was replaced by quieter, more relaxed sounds. Its eyes, which had held centuries of caution and pain, now carried a softer curiosity. Occasionally, it would lift its head to watch the medic, almost as if acknowledging the care being given. The alien team watched in amazement. They had seen countless creatures respond to treatment, but nothing compared to the mammoth's combination of intelligence, patience, and emotional response. Centuries of neglect had not broken its spirit. Instead, it had survived, ready to respond when genuine care finally arrived. Interaction between the medic and the mammoth deepened. The human continued to use soft tones, slow movements, and consistent presence to reinforce trust. The mammoth began to anticipate these gestures, sometimes approaching before the medic could call it over. It would stand near the medic during observations, shift weight as instructed, and even allow gentle touch in areas that had not been previously accessible. These small behaviors were milestones, reflecting both the mammoth's growing confidence and the effectiveness of patient, compassionate care. The medic also implemented targeted therapies for the injured foot. Using a combination of natural compounds, gentle massages, and specialized support pads, the mammoth's foot began to regain mobility. The swelling reduced further, the hardened tissue softened, and new healthy skin began forming. The creature's strength returned gradually, each step becoming more stable, each shift in weight more confident. The alien team noted the remarkable progress, recording data for future reference, and ensuring that the treatments were applied consistently. For the mammoth, every step forward was not just physical recovery, but a reclaiming of its dignity and freedom. Over time, the mammoth's movements became less cautious and more exploratory. It began to wander through the valley, testing terrain it had avoided for decades. Streams were crossed carefully, but confidently. Soft mosses were grazed upon with renewed interest, and shaded areas were explored for rest. Each action was a testament to its returning vitality. The medic followed, observing how the creature interacted with the environment, noting improvements, and making minor adjustments to support its recovery. What had once been a limp, cautious gait was now a steady, purposeful stride. Recovery was not only physical, but emotional. The mammoth, once isolated and wary of all beings, now displayed signs of comfort and curiosity. It occasionally engaged in playful behaviors, testing the alien tools or nudging gentle objects with its tusks. It interacted subtly with the alien team as well, showing moments of recognition and trust that had been impossible just weeks earlier. The medic realized that healing required attention, not only to the body, but to the mind. The mammoth had survived centuries of neglect, and helping it regain a sense of safety and trust was as critical as repairing the physical damage. The medic also introduced small challenges to encourage strength. Soft inclines, gentle slopes, and uneven terrain were incorporated to promote balance and muscle development. The mammoth approached these with caution at first, testing each step, but gradually it became more confident. These exercises were crucial for rebuilding endurance, strengthening the injured foot, and ensuring that the mammoth could navigate its environment safely. Each successful step was celebrated quietly by the team, a reminder that patience, observation, and gentle encouragement could achieve what years of neglect had knocked out as weeks turned into months. The mammoth's transformation became undeniable. Its foot, once swollen and infected, now bore weight confidently. Its movements were strong and steady, and its behavior reflected a creature that had regained trust and comfort. The alien team marveled at the human medic's dedication, noting that the combination of patient observation, careful treatment, and emotional connection had produced results that technology alone could not achieve. The mammoth had survived, endured, and now thrived, proving the power of empathy and skill combined. The mammoth's presence in the valley began to influence its surroundings. Smaller creatures, once wary, approached more freely, sensing the mammoth's calm and regained strength. Plants thrived where it grazed, and the streams it crossed remained undisturbed. The human medic observed these subtle ecological changes, realizing that recovery had a ripple effect beyond the individual. The mammoth's healing restored balance and life to a corner of the planet that had suffered neglect for centuries. One morning, the medic approached the mammoth, kneeling softly and extending a hand near its head. The creature lowered its massive head, eyes soft, allowing a gentle touch on the side of its face. It was a moment of quiet understanding, a connection forged through patience, respect, and consistent care. The mammoth had survived centuries of pain, neglect, and isolation, and now, for the first time, it seemed to recognize that it was valued and safe. The medic smiled quietly, realizing that this bond was as important as the physical healing itself. By the end of the recovery period, the mammoth was walking, grazing, and exploring as it had not for centuries. The injured foot was fully supported, mobility restored, and confidence returned. The alien team documented the progress carefully, noting the remarkable resilience of the creature and the effectiveness of the human-led treatment. The mammoth's transformation was a symbol of hope, a living testament to what patience, compassion, and skilled intervention could achieve. The valley, once a place of isolation and pain, now felt alive with possibility. The mammoth moved freely, interacted subtly with both the alien team and the human medic, and explored its environment with a renewed sense of purpose. What had begun as centuries of neglect had become a story of recovery, resilience, and trust. The mammoth, once a victim of circumstance, now thrived under care that combined science, empathy, and respect for its unique existence. The medic reflected on the journey. The work had been difficult, requiring skill, patience, and constant observation, but the results were profound. A life that had been ignored for centuries had been given a chance to flourish. The mammoth's recovery was not just physical, it was emotional, behavioral, and symbolic. It demonstrated that even the most neglected beings could respond to care, that trust could be rebuilt, and that compassion could overcome the weight of centuries. As the mammoth roamed freely, occasionally pausing to watch the human and alien teams with calm curiosity, it was clear that a new chapter had begun. The creature had survived isolation, endured pain, and now embodied the possibilities of recovery, connection, and hope. The medic, quietly observing from a distance, knew that this story was more than a medical triumph. It was a testament to the power of patience, empathy, and the human capacity to reach across boundaries to restore life and dignity. The valley was alive in a way it hadn't been for centuries. Birds and strange creatures that had been cautious and rare began moving freely, following the mammoth's lead. The once swollen, infected foot now carried the massive creature steadily across moss-covered rocks, through shallow streams, and beneath the crystal-like trees that glimmered under the sunlight. Its movement was confident, powerful, yet gentle, a remarkable contrast to the fragile, limping figure that had first appeared to the human medic weeks ago. Every step it took was a testament to survival, resilience, and the care it had finally received. A human medic observed from a short distance, careful not to disturb the mammoth's newfound independence. It was a quiet moment of reflection after months of intense focus, observation, and meticulous care. The medic knew that this was more than a story of physical recovery. It was a story of trust, of patience, and of the emotional connection that had developed between a human and a being so different from anything on Earth. The mammoth had survived centuries of neglect, and now, for the first time, it moved freely in a world where it was respected, safe, and understood. The alien team joined quietly, standing at the edges of the valley. They had been instrumental in providing environmental support, monitoring equipment, and detailed knowledge of the mammoth's biology. Yet, it was the human medic's patient, empathetic approach that had unlocked the creature's willingness to accept care. Together, humans and aliens had bridged centuries of isolation and pain, creating a partnership that restored not only the mammoth's body, but its spirit. Watching it roam freely, the team felt a deep sense of accomplishment and humility. The mammoth paused near a stream, lowering its head to drink, muscles rippling under its pale blue skin streaked with gold. It seemed almost reflective, as if sensing the significance of the moment. It had survived centuries of neglect, endured pain that no living creature should carry for so long, and now it was free to explore and heal in a way that was previously unimaginable. The medic approached slowly, speaking softly, kneeling, and allowing the mammoth to acknowledge them without fear. The gesture was simple, but it represented months of trust, patience, and dedication. Over the following days, the mammoth's behavior shifted in remarkable ways. It began exploring areas of the valley that had been untouched for generations. Gentle slopes, hidden clearings, and shallow streams were tested carefully. It grazed freely, interacted with smaller creatures, and even engaged in playful movements, nudging stones and small plants with its tusks. Every action reflected both physical strength and emotional recovery. The mammoth was no longer the cautious, wary being it had been. It had learned to trust, to explore, and to reclaim the world it had survived in for so long. The medic observed subtle signs that the mammoth's confidence was returning. Its tail moved more freely, ears flicked in response to gentle sounds, and breathing became deep and steady. Every step was fluid and deliberate, a clear sign of regained balance and strength. The medic realized that recovery had progressed beyond the physical realm. Centuries of neglect had affected the mammoth's sense of safety and emotional well-being. But with time, trust, and careful attention, those wounds were also beginning to heal. The mammoth was rediscovering life itself. The alien team began documenting the progress. Data collected over months showed remarkable improvement in mobility, behavior, and physiological signs. The mammoth's foot, once severely infected and rigid, now supported weight confidently. Its muscles had regained flexibility, its movements were fluid, and its behavior reflected curiosity rather than fear. The medic contributed detailed notes on emotional responses, trust-building techniques, and patient engagement strategies. Together, they created a record that could help future efforts to restore life to neglected or endangered creatures across the galaxy. Interaction between the mammoth and the human medic remained profound. Even without words, a connection had been established that bridged species, centuries, and experiences of pain and survival. The mammoth would approach the medic calmly, allowing gentle touches, following directions in subtle ways, and responding to soft tones and careful gestures. It had become a teacher in its own right, showing how patience, empathy, and consistent care could overcome fear and trauma, even in a creature that had endured centuries of neglect. One day, the mammoth ventured further than ever before, crossing a broad clearing and pausing on a gentle hill overlooking the valley. It lifted its head, taking in the surroundings with a sense of mastery and confidence. The medic followed quietly, observing from a distance, aware that this moment symbolized more than recovery. It symbolized freedom. Centuries of suffering and isolation had given way to exploration, strength, and a restored sense of purpose. The valley itself seemed to respond, alive with movement, color, and the subtle energy of a world that had been neglected and was now being rediscovered. The mammoth occasionally returned to the medic, nuzzling gently, allowing inspection of the foot, and engaging in quiet interactions. Each encounter reinforced the trust that had been painstakingly built over months. The medic realized that this relationship was central to the mammoth's full recovery. Trust had been earned, not given, and it had become the foundation for every successful step of the healing process. The mammoth's eyes reflected understanding, recognition, and perhaps gratitude, a depth of emotion that transcended species. The alien team, while observing from a respectful distance, marveled at the human-centric approach to healing. Technology had provided data, monitoring, and support, but it was the human capacity for empathy, patience, and emotional connection that had unlocked the mammoth's willingness to accept care. It was a lesson in the power of trust, the importance of gentle guidance, and the profound impact of understanding another being's perspective. The mammoth's recovery was not just physical, it was relational, psychological, and deeply emotional. Over time, the mammoth began interacting more confidently with its environment. Streams were crossed with ease, grazing areas were explored thoroughly, and hidden clearings became playgrounds of exploration. Small alien creatures that had once kept their distance approached more freely, sensing the mammoth's calm presence. Even the surrounding plant life seemed to flourish under its movements, as if responding to the restored balance of the ecosystem. The valley, once a silent witness to neglect, now thrummed with life, resilience, and harmony. The medic took careful notes on every new development, observing not only physical recovery, but behavioral changes. Curiosity and confidence allowed for a comprehensive understanding of the mammoth's healing journey. The combination of patient intervention, emotional support, and careful environmental management had created a transformation that went beyond expectation. The mammoth was no longer defined by centuries of neglect. It had become a symbol of resilience, care, and the power of trust across species. By the end of the recovery period, the mammoth was fully mobile, confident, and thriving. It moved through the valley with grace, strength, and curiosity. Its foot, once a source of pain and immobility, now carried it steadily across every terrain. The medic observed quietly, reflecting on the journey that had begun with a creature suffering in isolation and ended with a being capable of exploring, playing, and thriving once again. Centuries of neglect had been replaced by months of care, patience, and trust, resulting in a life restored. The final moments of this journey were quiet but profound. The mammoth paused on a high ridge, looking over the valley it had survived and now reclaimed. Its massive body cast long shadows in the afternoon sun, muscles rippling under pale blue skin streaked with gold. The medic approached slowly, kneeling to show respect and allowing the mammoth to acknowledge them without fear. The alien team watched, knowing that this moment was more than symbolic. It represented the triumph of care, empathy, and persistence. Centuries of pain had been overcome, and life had been restored in its fullest sense. The mammoth slowly turned and moved back toward the streams and grazing areas, exploring freely, testing terrain, and interacting with its environment. Its behavior reflected not only physical recovery, but also emotional resilience and curiosity. The valley, once a place of neglect, had become a sanctuary. The human medic knew that this story, while extraordinary, was a reminder that life, even when forgotten, could respond to patience, empathy, and skilled care. Trust had been rebuilt, strength restored, and hope renewed, not just for the mammoth, but for the ecosystem around it. In the quiet of the evening, the mammoth settled near the stream, muscles relaxing, breathing deep and steady. The medic sat nearby, reflecting on the long journey. This creature, once limping in centuries of pain and neglect, had regained freedom, mobility, and confidence. Its survival and recovery were a testament to what patience, empathy, and careful attention could achieve. The mammoth's life, once overlooked, had become a story of resilience, trust, and the enduring power of care across boundaries, species, and time.